You all remember those two videos 2 years ago where I talked about both of the Sali Mali shows and how Sally was probably Wales's third popular children's character? Well, I think now is the time that I'm gonna be talking about one of the VHS's during my childhood. And I'm referring to this one from Caffi Sali Mali. This tape was the first of the volumes I watched because as far as I can remember, there were several other tapes I only saw in primary school. Like with a tape featuring an episode where Sali Mali, Jakajuk and Niku Naku go skiing, and one where Sally and her friends prepare a barbecue and that Jack mistakes the smokes for a fire. And he ran like a complete lunatic. So, like I said, this tape includes the first few episodes of a show, where they aired somewhere during 1994 when it began. With no further explanations, let's dive into the tape and see what it's got for us. Now, much like the Tequin VHS, I couldn't find the opening for this tape anywhere online, so I can only assume it starts off with a video sign ident since they distributed the tape and that their logo's on the cover. Then we head straight to the intro, and just to clarify, there are two versions of the opening for the show. Yeah, if you didn't know, Caffi Sali Mali has two different openings despite having the same theme song. The one in this tape and others has the show's title on a plate with silver platter in between, before it then page curls to images of several characters such as Sali Mali, played by Rebecca Harries, Jakajuk, played by Idris Morris Jones, Niku Naku, played by Neil Anthony Roberts, Shani Vlewok, played by Rian Cadwaladr, Dumplen Malwoden, played by Margaret Esley, Pribach Teo, played by Mickey Plum, and the kitchen utensils, voiced by Delith Wynn, just as it fades to the show's title. However, in very later episodes seen in some VHS releases, the opening has Niku Naku playing ball with Morgan and Maggie Ann, played by Aaron and Emma Pritchard respectively. Just as Sali Mali arrives on the scene and leads the children inside her cafe to give them drinks. All the while the camera zooms in on the window which has the words Caffi Sali Mali decorated before a circly fade shows the title seen in the first intro. Now, I don't know which intro is better in my opinion, but I likely give the second one a chance as that one was what I remember the most. So, without further ado, the first episode on the tape is Croeso i'r Caffi, which is Welcome to the Cafe in Welsh. We start off with Sali Mali setting up things for her new cafe she acquired. Yeah, the stories in the books are just too simple for them to be adapted into television, so we'll just have Sali Mali starting her business working in a cafe, as that wasn't a thing that was established or hinted in the books that Sally wants to work in a cafe. Because she and her friends in the Cyfres Darllen story series are so popular, we'll let the audiences be already familiar with them, with no trace of background or world building seen in the books. So, Sally has been given her own cafe called Caffi Sali Mali to work, while she's busy preparing for her first customer to visit on opening day. And her first customer is exactly who you would expect, showing his hand, both of his hand and foot, before revealing to be none other than Jakajuk. And I have to say, this tiny scene alone is a very neat visual representation and reference to the book Jakajuk appears in. Then we get a song of Jack singing about himself, not just about who he is, but mostly about his clothes that are poorly fit for him. And if you want to hear the song for yourself with English subtitles, well, here's your chance.
Jakajuk, hello zitahi. Jakajuk, donna venui hindea. Jakajuk, ia donna vi. Ac mae unrhyw ffrind I Jakajuk yn ffrind I chi.
After the song, Jack sits down at the table unsuccessfully and compliments how swanky Sally's cafe looks. He then looks at the menu to choose what food or drink he will order, and by doing so, he reads it upside down. Yeah, you know exactly what I said in that review 2 years ago, that this sound is constantly reused throughout the series whenever someone does a mistake, and I find it quite a bit annoying, but I'm not gonna complain about it again. Jack orders a cream cake, an orange juice, and a roly-poly pudding cake, as he suggests that it's his favorite. Sally was about to go bring in the cake and make the juice for Jack, just as she trips on Jack's feet as his legs are very long. She gives Jack his order, with the orange juice having a fancy-looking straw in his glass. I really miss drinking stuff with these, and are there any more unique-looking straws nowadays? Sally is then seen cutting a piece of a roly-poly pudding and brings it to Jack on a plate. She then heads over to the kitchen, happy that her first customer is enjoying his meal. Meanwhile with Jack, as he is eating his pudding, a female voice can be heard coming from the box who is trying to get out. The box opens, revealing a washing mop by the name of Mop Golchi Chestri. The mop suddenly gets spotted by Jack and questions him on why he's looking at her. Mop, whom we'll call her at this point, calls out to two of the other objects, a wooden spoon named Shoibren and a saucepan named Sospan Var, and we're introduced to them. The three utensils kind of stand out as they were voiced by the same actress and that they were given different voices and personalities of their own. Mop is dainty and vain, Shoy is mischievous, and Sospan is shown to be a bit timid. And due to the fact they're the only puppets in the show, the reason why Mop, Shoy and Sospan hide in the box is because Sali Mali uses them to work in the kitchen all day, causing a bit of nuisance for them and not having any breaks, so they reside in the box and hide from Sally just so they don't want to be used by her. And hence this is why they only interact with Jakajuk and in later episodes of the show, Niku Naku and Tomos Karadog. And never once did they talk to Sally at one point. Mop then hears Sally coming and singing and takes cover just as she comes in, thinking that she heard voices. Jack has just finished with his food and sees a bill that Sali Mali just put on the table, realizing that he must pay. What's worse is that Jakajuk doesn't have any money. So, Jack tries to get away, but is stopped by Sally, who sees that he hasn't got any money. She is disappointed that her first customer won't pay, so that means Jack must work in the kitchen unless he has any payment. Jack is seen cleaning dishes in the kitchen, and Sally asks if he has seen the washing mop. Jack pretends he doesn't know, as he was told by Mop earlier that she doesn't want Sally to use her. With no other choice, Jack has to wash the dishes with a dish brush just as Sally...
Jack, be wyt ti 'di neud?
Oh, Jack a Juk, you shouldn't have. You done goofed. So, that was the start of one of the most iconic children's characters in Wales appearing in television, and this was the way to introduce the audience to these characters. As I said in my review of Caffi Sali Mali and earlier in this video, I think the reason why most of Mary Vaughan Jones's books haven't been adapted into television is because, well, there's not much going on in them. Despite these books being so popular with children and Wales as a whole, the stories aren't complex enough as only a few paragraphs are written in them and that they're too simple for this kind of material to be put on television. So it kind of makes sense for this show to develop the characters and make them flesh out and stand out more to the audiences, showing what personalities they have. Sali Mali is the kind-hearted motherly figure and Jakajuk is the clumsy ditzy oaf. And plus, giving Sali Mali a job to work in her cafe is a really neat and simple concept to work through, as it's showing more of what the title character can do. Even with this show, it's a good introduction to start off with a bang. Or smash as I play this. Heh, you get it? Overall, a perfect start to Sali Mali's first TV show. The next episode on the tape is Atishu. From the title alone, it sounds like someone in the episode is having a cold. We start with Sali Mali listing what ingredients she has in the cafe. She notices that there are only 2 sachets of lemon juice left and wonders where her washing mop could be, as she hasn't found it last episode. She was about to look in the box until the phone rings. As she goes to pick it up, someone in the box sneezes, which turned out to be Mop Golchi Chestri, having a cold. Mop was glad that Sally didn't open the box she was in and outright admitted that she ate a lemon juice sachet, explaining why Sally saw that there were only 2 left in the tin. Mop then manages to steal one of the last 2 sachets and she and Huibren fight over on who gets to eat the lemon juice. Sally returns and feels that the cafe is cold and puts on the temperature to make the place warmer. Jakachuk enters the cafe and bumps his head on top of the doorframe, which is a running gag throughout the show, mind you. Jack explains to Sally that he has been playing football in the park, and another running gag is that he mixes up certain phrases or words. And this is something only Welsh-speaking viewers get, as the stuff Jakachuk jumbles with words, as I don't think there's a Sali Mali wiki on the internet. Yet. Here's what I mean.
Dwi 'di bod yn chwarae pêl droed yn y parc. Dwi'n chwys tatan.
Chwys domen, Jack. Dyma'r fwydlen I ti.
Prydlon, ia?
Na, Jack, nid prydlon, bwydlen. Pai, Jack, yr ysgol.
O na, dydw I ddim yn mynd i'r ysgol. Dwi'n rhy hen, sdi.
Yr ysgol, Jack.
As I was saying, Sally sees that Jack has forgotten his red jumper, which he left in the park, and warns that he will catch a cold in his shirt for too long. Jack says that he's never caught a cold in his life, and Sally asks if he would like a drink of hot lemon juice, to which Jack declines and prefers a cold drink instead. Sally sees that there is only 1 sachet of lemon juice left in the tin and remembers that Shani Vlewog bought the most yesterday. Speaking of, Shani Vlewog enters the cafe and greets Sally.
Wel oes, fel mae'n digwydd, Chanel Pedwar.
Chanel Pedwar? Don't you mean Channel 4? Or in case of a language, S4C? Does that channel exist in this universe? Shani buys the last of the lemon juice sachets and says that she needs it to cure Pribachtel's cold. Later, Sally is seen talking with Jakachuk and Jack asks for some orange juice. Like last episode, we have Jack drinking orange juice with a fancy looking straw. I'm sure there might be unique looking ones nowadays. The orange juice costs 10p, but however, Jack realizes that he hasn't brought any money to pay. Again. And we have a song where Jack admits that he has no money, and it's titled Faint yw'r oren, Sally. Oh yeah, these songs have titles, and most of them can be heard in 2 albums released in 2001 and 2003. The one heard in the previous episode is just called Can Jakachuk, as it's mostly Jack describing who he is and his clothes. So, during the song, Jack gives Sally 6 2pences, making a total of 12p. So, this time Jack did bring money along with him. Wait, so he admitted that he didn't bring money with him, yet in the song, he is paying with his money, so... Did he just outright think he forgot to bring money? Whatever. While Sally heads over to the kitchen, Jack hears Mop in the box sneezing and notices how raspy her voice is. Mop says that she got the flu from Hui and Sospan, as both of them had the cold off screen, and she admits that she stole the lemon juice sachets in the tin. Sally returns and asks Jack if he had been sneezing, and Jack makes an excuse that it was surely a cat. He then goes over to the park to get his jumper back. Later, Pribachtel goes over to the cafe and says that he is hiding from Shani Vlewog. He also says that he still has the cold and that he doesn't want any more hot lemon juice, as Shani forced him to drink lots of a hot drink to make him feel better. Suddenly, Sally senses that Shani Vlewog is on her way to the cafe, and with quick thinking, she hides Pribachtel in a wrapped curtain. Shani enters the cafe and Sally pretends to her that she hasn't seen Pribach. However, a few spots of a green fly can be seen, and Sali tries to make excuses on what is behind her and that she has a cold. Just as Pribach Tau sneezes. Her excuses work and Shani leaves for cafe. The fat green fly is glad to be away from her. Just then, Jackajuk comes into the cafe and surprise, surprise, he has a cold. Just like Mob Golchistri and Pribach Tau, Jack starts sneezing like crazy just as the episode ends on a freeze frame as Jack was about to do a sneeze. My, what an episode this is. An episode revolving around sneezing. I mean, this is typically one of those tropes in kid shows where characters get the flu and they constantly sneeze about. What's more is that this episode is a loose adaptation of the book Anwyd y Pribach Tau, Welsh for the fat little fly's cold. It has some elements like Pribach Tau having the flu and him refusing to drink some hot lemon juice to cure him. Which is what this episode played out like in the book, where the fat fly says that he doesn't like drinking lemon juice, and his dislike for it isn't explored further in the rest of the Sali Mali media. So, while this episode has a bit of humour in some scenes, I can give this episode a pass for adapting a tiny bit of stuff from one of Jones's books. After that is Esgidiau Newydd, which is Welsh for new shoes. The episode starts off with Jackajuk walking to the cafe and he's apparently crying out in pain. Why? He enters the cafe and Sali settles what the matter with Jack is. Jack says that he is in pain, where it is coming from his feet. It turns out that his shoes have turned smaller, that they are hurting his feet. Do they, as it seems? Sali inspects the shoes and pulls one of them out with all her might. And also, it turns out that there are marbles inside Jack's shoe and that Jack has been looking for them. Silly Jack, that total doofus is. Sali also notices that Jack's shoes have become old and says that he needs a new pair to replace them. Jack agrees with what Sali is suggesting and she says that he can buy them in a shoe shop. Jack convinces Sali to come with him, to which she agrees, as long as she shuts the cafe down for an hour. However, before they can go, Sali says to Jack that there are tiny holes in his socks and he needs to fix them and... Am I the only one seeing that there's a fetish in this episode? So, Sali brings in the wool to knit the hole in Jack's sock. Jack is then seen knitting wool for his socks, and when he sees that no one else is around, he plays around with his toes and gives them names, and you know where this is going like in my review.
George Morris, Long Harris, well done at 3.
Yes, this was allowed back on children's television, and nobody had a problem with it. And this episode couldn't get any more foot fetish as it is. So, in this moment that makes you go, WTH am I watching? Jackajuk sings a song called Cannabis of Chide, where he sings the names of his toes such as Bisbrooksin, Short Morris, Long Harris, and so on. And while the context and lyrics of the song are pretty... at least the music has a sort of Elvis Presley feel to it. So, after that song that made no sense, Mob mocks Jack about the song he just sang. Well, you shouldn't have let her tease you if you didn't sing that nonsensical song in the first place. Mob jokes about that Jack has lost his marbles, where the scenario Jack was in earlier, and that the song he sung really worked for a gag, I guess. Sali Mali and Jackajuk are on their way to town to visit several shoe shops, all the while Jack ties his shoelaces. Sali also prepares herself just as she changes her shoes. However, she finds out that there is green paper inside them, as she forgot to remove them when she bought them. The two head on their way to town and we get a montage of them visiting some shoe shops while an instrumental version of Cannabis of Chide plays. There are some gags to be seen, like Jack picking up and trying out shoes that aren't his size, and funny enough, the other shop they visit has a pair that fits perfectly in his feet. Unfortunately, much like the beginning of the episode, Jack feels a pain in his feet. He thinks that the new shoes are too small for his feet, but Sally denies that they aren't and that they're the correct pair. As Jack removes both of his shoes, he looks inside of them, and to his and Sally's surprise, it turns out that Jack forgot to remove the paper from the new shoes when he bought them and put them on. And with that, the episode ends on quite a wholesome and humorous note. That episode is good for all it is. Even though there was that song that came out of nowhere and made no context whatsoever and is only made to fill the episode's runtime. Because let's face it, the entire show is a musical, so it has to have songs in every episode. And this one might possibly make no sense whatsoever, as it just doesn't fit the theme for the episode about shoes, so why not make a song about shoes anyway? Despite that out-of-context song, I think I may give this episode a pass. The fourth and last episode on the tape is A Trip, which is the trip in Welsh. In this episode, we see Sally preparing a picnic, all the while she is waiting everyone to come to her cafe. Jack a Jook had organised for the gang to come on a trip, but he refused to say where they were going. As Sally leaves the counter, Mob once again comes out of a box and questions how she, Llwy and Sosban can go to the trip with Sally and the others. Mob devises a plan that she and the two hide in the picnic basket and cover themselves so that nobody would see them. Then, the first person to come to Sally's cafe is Shani Vlewog, who has brought some apples to the picnic. Shani asks Sally where they are going to the trip, but Sally says that the only thing she got from Jack is that it's a surprise. The second person to arrive is Pribach Teo, who has brought some oranges and a magazine all about cars. Which, if you don't know, is a part of his character seen in the books where he's shown to own a car. And that alone is shown in some instances of the series where he's shown driving his car in certain pieces of media. Then came Dumplen Malwoden, whom Pribach Teo lightly teases her as Speedy Gonzales.
Sôn am gyflym Sali Mali, dyma hi Speedy Gonzales yn cyrraedd.
No wonder they reference a cartoon Mexican mouse in a Welsh show. Dumplen has brought along some cakes, despite them being too sweet and burnt. Everyone has their predictions on what their trip is going to be like. Dumplen suggests that they go to a flower garden, but Pribach denies this as they could be going to a rally car show. Jakajuk and Nikunaku finally arrive at the cafe and everyone asks where they are going. Unaware of this, Mob, Llwy and Sosban have found their way sneaking into the picnic basket just as the gang sings a song about going on a trip. The song is called Mynd am Drip as the characters suggest where they are going. And I have to say that this song might be my favourite from this show, since it's catchy and that the orchestral strings are in that 90s synthesizers type heard in most kid shows of that decade. And I have to thank Carol Parry Jones for creating music for the show, even if I have a long-term memory remembering most of the songs. So, near the end of the song, Sally and her friends leave a cafe and board a bus. We have ourselves a montage of Sally and Co on the bus wondering where they are going just as they stop to have a toilet break, and we see the 3 utensils hiding in the bag. The bus carries on and finally arrives at a place called Star Coast World, or as it was formerly called, Butlins Pwcheli. Yeah, there's also some trivia for all of you. This episode was filmed at a holiday camp that had an amusement park in it. It sadly closed in 1998, though the camp would become part of Haven Holidays and most of the attractions and rides have been removed since. Nowadays, the place is called Havana Mor, now just standing as a holiday camp with no funfair in sight. So, Sali Mali and her friends have reached their destination and start to have fun at the amusement park. We get another montage of everyone enjoying themselves, like Dumplen sniffing at some flowers, Niku on a motor tricycle ride, Sally doing some shopping, and Jack, Niku and Pribach on the bumper boats. Jackajuk then sees that Mob has been brought along and that she, Llwy and Sosban have been hiding all the time. The friends settle in for a picnic as an instrumental version of Mindam Drip plays in the background. They enjoy their food, but Pribach notes that he has been eating too much. Sally suggests that they go back to the fair right after they finish eating, while Mob has been given food of her own to eat. After eating, everyone goes back to the fair to have more fun like usual. Sally collects several troll dolls, Jack and Niku ride on a double-seated tricycle, Jack and Pribach drive on a go-kart course, and everyone goes on the Ferris wheel. Everyone has so much fun today, and Sally suggests that they go to her cafe to have some supper. And the episode ends with a bus driving them home all the way back to the cafe. The end credits roll, showing the names of the people who have worked on the show and the actors who have played the characters. There's also a message seen in the credits that translates to "The series was based on characters created by the late Mary Vaughan Jones and illustrated by Rowena Wynne Lloyd and Jack Jones, thanks to Ceredigion Book Society Ref for their cooperation." And with that, that's all this tape has in store. So, for this episode, it's pretty decent. Showing some of the characters we're familiar with in the books and even introducing a few like Dumplen Malwoden and Niku Naku. We wouldn't get characters like Jackie Soch, Thomas Karadog and Morgan and Maggie Ann the twins in later episodes, so this episode at least has half of the cast. And this is a more biased and unknown fact to you all. This episode may be popular of the show, just because the YouTube upload by the user Jenny Klauser has the most views of the others Jenny has uploaded and the most viewed on their channel. Not just that, but the song heard in the episode was also used as background music in 2 of my videos. One where I talked about the drawings I did for the Mr. Men, as the company Shankar was responsible for producing the Welsh dub of a cartoon, and one in my Caffi Sali Mali review. Hence why I used it more than most of the other songs in the show. Do you get me now? Overall, this episode, while not as big as the barbecue episode, stood out for its time for including some of the characters we've come to know. And even showing charm from the characters. And that's all I have to say about this tape. Is it good? Is it the best of the Sali Mali VHSs I've seen? Naturally, I'll just say how this show fares for me. Caffi Sali Mali was a way to introduce children and Welsh-speaking audiences to the character who was first created in the late 60s by an author and would later spark its popularity by being nominated at the 1996 Welsh Children's Programming BAFTA Awards. Spawning a cartoon by Serial in 2000 and having a follow-up series to Caffi called Penterbach where, damn it, why aren't any of the episodes uploaded to the internet yet? The DVDs are literally available to buy in some websites, so it's not like this show is forgotten like every other show that S4C aired during the 2000s, but seriously, the DVDs are available to buy! Sorry for my rant. So, Caffi Sali Mali alone has some enjoyable yet simplistic stories, likeable characters, catchy songs, and a charming sense of humour. And it's no wonder why I keep on thinking and saying that Sali Mali is Wales's 3rd most popular children's character behind Fireman Sam and Super Ted. But let's just leave that out behind. Anyway, since next month is the Halloween season, I was thinking of a movie that I'm pretty sure you're familiar that I mentioned in an earlier episode. I'm of course referring to the stop-motion duo from the DVD that included the 3 short films, and this time, it's something revolving around a were-rabbit. There'll be some twists and turns once I watch this movie in time for the spooky season, so might as well go for it. TTFN, ta-ta for now!